All right, so this is African American Studies. We're still in the introductory part where we're talking about African civilizations. I'm Coach Arnold, and this is part 2. So, pulling out your previous notes over African civilizations, we are going to add onto them the Kingdom of Mali. So, our EQ for Mali is going to be: how did Mali rise to become the powerful kingdom that they were? And what eventually leads to their decline? So you can shorthand that. How did Mali rise and how did Mali fall? Okay. So remember, we are using Cornell Notes. In your Cornell Notes, any questions or the headers or titles on the slides, those are going on the left-hand side. Any important information that you think will help you answer the discussion questions or the EQs are going to go on the right-hand side. Remember, this class is discussion-based. There is no such thing as a wrong answer in this class as long as you have the support to back up what you're trying to say. So you are the one who will decide what information you want to write on the right-hand side, okay? All right, so Mali. Once again, our EQ is: how did Mali rise to become the powerful kingdom that they were, and what led to their decline? All right, so Mali was a small kingdom that rose within Ghana after Ghana fell, and it took its place. So eventually, Mali replaces that old kingdom of Ghana and expands and becomes even more successful than Ghana actually was. It was led by Sundata Keita, um, and he is known as the Lion King. He was the second born son of a king. His father already had a wife and already had a son, but a foreseer came to him and told him, "You are going to meet a ugly, hideous, extremely unattractive woman, and when you meet her, you need to make her your wife. Once you marry her, she's going to give you a son, and that son is going to become the ruler of a great empire." So at first, his father was like, I already have a wife, I already have a son, really not interested. But then he met this hunchback woman. Not only was she hunchback, but her facial features were also extremely unattractive. And he said, you know what, I have nothing to lose. So he actually took this woman as his second wife. And a year or two later, they had a son who becomes Sundata Keita. And he is weak, he's crippled, he doesn't walk very well, and he's kind of the embarrassment, okay? So eventually, his father dies, and his brother takes rise and power of that kingdom, and they banish Sundata Keita and his hunchback mother out into the wilderness. This is like the Lion King, right? So the king dies, and then the son gets banished into the wilderness. But while he's in the wilderness, Sundata Keita works extremely hard to build his strength. He becomes extremely powerful. He becomes extremely strong. And some people even start to consider him as a sorcerer or a source of magic, okay? So while he's in the wilderness, his brother actually loses his kingdom to the Susu people. And people are looking at Sundata Keita, they're hearing all these stories, and they're like, we need you to come home, we need you to fight for this kingdom. And so he eventually comes home and he fights for the kingdom and wins that kingdom of Mali back. And when he does, he goes in and he creates family lines of occupations and he creates a dynasty. Okay, so Sundata Keita is known as the original Lion King. He gets exiled with his mother. He comes back stronger and better, and he fights off the enemy. He also defeats his brother to take that kingdom as well. All right, so Sundata Keita, we talked about him already. He leads the people in conquering and expanding that original territory. When he becomes the king, he makes that kingdom of Mali just as great and successful as Ghana. So he elevates the status of it. And then because he created that family structure of jobs and occupancy, meaning like if your father is a goat herder, you're going to be a goat herder. If your father is a storyteller, then you're a storyteller. So with him setting this up in place, he's the king. So his son will become the king. And his great grandson, Mansa Kita, or Musa, sorry, he becomes the king. And he becomes known as the King of Kings. So Mansa Musa, he is considered the greatest king of Mali because he creates and puts back in place that gold and salt trade and elevates the status of Mali even higher than what was previously before him. Okay? So not only did he make the kingdom powerful and rich, but he also made himself powerful and rich. And the stories of his riches spread throughout Africa, the Middle East, and through Europe. All right, so Mansa Musa, he was a Muslim. He practiced the Islamic faith. So because of this, he built many beautiful mosques or Islamic temples throughout Western Africa. And as he took his Hajj or his journey back to Mecca, he actually built several mosques throughout Northern Africa as well. All right, so Mansa Musa, he's going to be your most famous Mali ruler or king. As I said before, he was Muslim. He was a follower of the Islamic faith. He built those Islamic temples throughout Western Africa. And then he goes on to take his journey to Mecca. And you guys, when he did this, this was like something people had never seen before, okay? He's got caravans of camels. He's got servants and other followers behind him. They said he left with 60,000 servants from Mali in West Africa, and he travels through the Sahara Desert to Egypt and East Africa, and then eventually into the Middle East, okay? So 60,000 servants. Some of these servants are carrying gold, jewels, rubies, salt. He's got 80 camels, and these camels are also holding, at the original start, 4,000 pounds of gold, okay? So as he's walking through the Sahara and he's going through towns and cities in Egypt, he is buying souvenirs with more than what they're worth. He's giving out gold to the poor. Because he's Muslim, he believes in that idea of charity. So he's throwing out gold along the way on the roads where these slaves are working. And it's just one of those things where people and the storytellers, everyone marveled at it, okay? So it was such a sight to be seeing that of his wealth and how powerful this kingdom was and how powerful he was as a king, that Europe, who had just been in shambles from war, they're looking like, who is this man? Like, we don't know who he is, but we want to find out because he's got all the money. Okay, so Mansa Musa does become the most famous and most powerful ruler of Mali. And today, you guys, he is still considered the richest man ever, beating out a lot of the billionaires that we know today. But in his time, the amount of gold and wealth that he had would be translated and equivalent to a lot more than the most richest man that we know today. Okay. But not only was he invested in the trade routes for the gold and salt and very devoted to his faith as a Muslim, but he also was a really big educator. So, and not only were these temples built, but they were also available as libraries and opportunities for people to go and learn and get their education. All right, so unfortunately, Mansa does die, and after him, the rulers are not as powerful. They're not able to expand the territory or the kingdom more than what it was already at. They weren't able to elevate that status anymore. And then, of course, you've got all of this word about how rich and powerful Mali is, that you start to get these Berbers and these other nomadic tribes that are like, well, we want some of this too. So you get Berbers who end up invading and claiming parts of the Mali kingdom, and those weak rulers are unable to defend them, and they end up losing the kingdom. Okay, so you have the Berbers from the north who come in and take parts of the kingdom, and then you also have tribes from the south who come in and take parts of the kingdom as well. And unfortunately, Mali is going to decline, but it will lead way to a new kingdom. So stay tuned for part 3.